Hello, everybody.
Hi.
Welcome to Role Play Grow Adventures in Gaming Therapy. My name is Adam Davis.
My name is Adam Johns.
We are the founders of Wheelhouse Workshop. In addition to my work with Wheelhouse Workshop, I've also worked at the Woodland Park Zoo here in Seattle. I've worked as a public school teacher, and most recently I've been helping the Atlantic Street Center down in South Seattle develop their video game-based dialectical behavioral therapy training program, and we'll talk more about that later.
For now, I guess we should find out a little bit more about you guys.
Raise your hand if you are someone who plays role-playing games.
Oh,
Fantastic.
Awesome.
Keep your hand up if you are someone who is a player primarily. You play characters. Now raise your hand if you're someone who likes to play game masters.
All right.
Fantastic.
That is a surprisingly even split. Let's get the other side of things. Raise your hand if you work or volunteer in mental health education, social work, community development, anything like that. Oh, man, that's also surprising. There's a lot of you guys. Yeah.
Is there any of you in the crowd in the fields that Adam was just talking about who uses role-playing games in your education in
Awesome.
therapy? Awesome. Please make sure you talk to each other and also talk to us after the show.
Yeah. So we started using games like Dungeons & Dragons for therapeutic social skill development about 6 years ago. We founded Wheelhouse Workshop in 2013, which runs 5 90-minute weekly D&D groups and serves more than 30 kids each week, helping them become more confident, creative, and socially capable people. Our groups see everything in a pretty wide range of challenges, everything from ADHD to anxiety to high-functioning autism to even just quirky, geeky kids that are having trouble making friends. We actually talked a lot about the origins of Wheelhouse Workshop and how we got started at our PAX East panel earlier this year, and we put that online. If you're interested, you can totally check that out.
So those of you that are that have played characters in Dungeons & Dragons or any kind of role-playing game, I'm curious how long you've played the same character. So I'm going to ask you to raise your hands again. Raise your hand if you've played the same character for more than 3 months. A lot of people. Raise your hand if you've played the same character for more than 6 months. Keep your hand up if you've played your character for more than a year. More than 2 years. More than 5 years? How long have you played your character? 7 years. Wow. You beat that?
Can anybody beat 7 years?
Well, it's 7 for a game that still exists.
Wow.
that's
7 years
pretty
and
amazing.
counting. Is it really impressive?
What's yours?
I've been playing the same character for 9 years.
9 years. That's incredible.
Very impressive. So whether you've played the same character for 9 years or you've played lots of different kinds of characters, what I want you to do now is think back about your character history, the kinds of characters you've played over the course of your gamer life. And what I want you to do is think about what those characters had in common. And then I want you to think about what was going on in your life while you were playing those characters. So when I was growing up, I started playing Dungeons & Dragons when I was about 10 years old. And I always loved playing rogue characters or monk characters, characters who were really dexterous, really agile. And in my life, when I was 10 years old, I was really very uncomfortable in my body. I was very overweight. I had long, greasy hair. I was very awkward, had a lot of struggles in my social life. And I realize now, looking back on it, that the reason why I loved rogues and monks so much is that they were what I was not and what I wanted to be. They were something that I was missing from my life, and I had an opportunity to be something else in these games. And whenever that character decided to talk to anybody, he was always very charming. And that was something that I also realized I didn't have in my own life. So what I want you to do is I want you to think about your character history and see if you can start making some connections between your characters and yourself. So when we spoke at our PAX South Talk last year, we talked about 4 of the reasons why Dungeons & Dragons or other role-playing games are good for you no matter why you sit down and play. But today, we're going to be talking about why you play and how you play and why that matters. Because if you reflect on why you sit down to play the games you play and why you play them that way, you have an opportunity to think about who you are and what might be missing from your life and how to be the person you really want to be.
So this technique is not actually all that unusual from the psychologist's perspective. Most of you are probably familiar with the term projection, which is what a lot of therapists and psychologists call the idea of when you take an internal process and you place it onto a blank slate in front of you. Usually this is used to refer to something like the Rorschach test, or Rorschach the character. Projection, so the way the Rorschach test works for anybody who's not familiar with it is the therapist or the psychologist holds up a piece of paper and it's got an ink blot on it that has an image but nothing of anything specific, just sort of a scattered image of ink. And then they ask the patient what they see in the image, and the patient says something like, "How did you get a picture of my dad making fun of me?" And then the therapist sort of jots something down and makes a lot of inferences from that. And we do this all the time. Usually, actually, this process is pretty unintentional. Usually, it's just a part of any time you're making decisions about something that has that blank slate potential. But we also do this all the time whenever we make a character. Every time you make a character, you have the opportunity to make decisions about that character. And because you're making decisions about that character, you're putting little pieces of yourself into that character. And even if the decision is just, do I want to play a character that's like Batman, or do I want to play a character that's like Green Arrow? They're both billionaire superheroes, but I've made the decision one way or the other, and because of that, it's significant. And every time I do that, I put a little piece of myself in there. And so that process means that your character is always a little piece of you, and you are always a little piece of your character. We actually guide this process a lot. We teach a lot of our current clients and a lot of our current players how to play Dungeons & Dragons. And so we have a lot of very new players. And whenever we have a new player, we give them a brand new character sheet with all the mechanics, all the parts of the character already filled out. But we ask them questions to guide through their backstory. So those questions are often questions like, did you grow up in a big city or a small town? What was the city that you grew up in famous for? Why did your character leave to become an adventurer? What encouraged them to go off and become an adventurer? And those are great questions for helping to build backstory, but they're also really significant questions for telling us about how much of their life they're putting into their character. And we'll even take that a little bit deeper. We'll ask questions like, does your character have any siblings?
Yeah, he's got 2 older brothers, and they pick on him all the time.
I'm curious, do you have any siblings?
Yeah, I have 2 older brothers. And not every example of transference is that obvious, where it's a direct one-to-one translation. A lot of the times when people are making characters, oftentimes they're idealized versions of themselves, or sometimes they are examples of themselves just in a fantasy world where they have more power and control.
In our groups, we ask a check-in question before every group. And towards the end of just about every quarter, we always like to ask this question. What lesson could you learn from your character? And one of the great things about this question is that it's always interesting to answer, but also it always helps us understand how the player is relating to their character and why they play that character. In one group, I had a player who had answered this question by saying, I could learn to be more forward with what I want from others. And he was playing a cleric who was actually mostly kind of a backline support cleric, a lot of healing and buffing. And he had described his character as being an ex-military leader. So really a strong character who knows how to ask for what he wants. But often that player was himself very quiet, and he often role-played that character as very quiet as well. That party wound up in a situation where they were escaping from a renegade church that was sort of doing evil acts, and they were escaping out the church, and they were fighting off the evil church guards. And they made their way all the way to the very front of the church, only to find themselves surrounded by the city guard, with their crossbows trained on them and weapons drawn. And the players knew in this instance that the city guard, getting captured by them, was a fate worse than death. It was going to be terrible. And so they were ready to fight. But the cleric caught out of the corner of his eye that one of the guards winked at him. And he knew, because of previous backstory, that meant that that guard was part of a secret organization that was going to be able to help them escape once they got captured. And so he turned to his party, and he said, I think we should go along with them. And the rogue turned to me, the game master, and he said, I draw my sword. Is clearly not ready to go along with any of this. And I watched as the player, sat up straight, straightened up his shoulders, put out his hands, raised his voice, and he said, trust me, I think this is the right thing to do. And I watched all the other players in the group kind of become taken aback. They hadn't heard him stand up like that. They hadn't heard him say and state what he wanted and what he needed. And the rogue kind of gritted his teeth and dropped his sword, and he said, "You better be right about this." And in that moment, I saw something really spectacular. I saw the cleric, the character, stand up to his party and stand up to the people that he was adventuring with. But I also saw that player stand up to the other players in the room and ask for what he wanted and for what he needed.
And in that example, that's a player who's made a character that has the qualities that he wants. So he's translating the confidence and the boldness of his character back into himself. But like I said earlier, not every one of our players does that. Oftentimes our players will make characters that are kind of exaggerated versions of themselves. Oftentimes that already include a lot of the problematic and sometimes maladaptive qualities and behaviors, just magnified. One example is we had a player who was very openly struggling with depression and extreme social isolation. And this player had come in and he had created a character who was an orphan who had escaped from an insane asylum with a talking cat that only she could hear. And as he said, "Everyone thinks I'm crazy." So you can already imagine that this character might have a hard time integrating into an adventuring party. But over time, they came to accept this character. And the party was adventuring in order to find a Dracolich, to ask its help, to fight against the onslaught of plants that were taking over the world, the heralded return of the Age of Green. And so they fought their way into this Dracolich's cave to get the audience with the Dracolich. And the Dracolich said to them, "Why should I fight to save a world in which I am the last of my kind?" And the player interrupted me and said, "That sounds kind of lonely." "Yes, it is." And I had created this Dracolich as kind of a bad guy, as sort of a proverbial lesser of two evils, that to make a deal with the devil, they were going to have to get the Dracolich's help to fight back the plants and then figure out later if that was the right thing to do. And instead, this Dracolich in this moment said, "Yes, I am alone. I have no family, no kin, no friends." And the player said, "Yeah, that sounds really hard. I also have no friends." And so they struck a deal with this newly empathetic Dracolich. And they got a magic item from the Dracolich to help the Dracolich out by corrupting a whole bunch of dragon eggs to make a new generation of Dracoliches. And I had asked this player at the end of the day to reflect on his experience, and he said, "Wow, I never expected to have empathy with a Dracolich." And then when we asked him this checkout question toward the end of the quarter, he said, "What I learned from my character is that it's okay to be unique, but you don't have to push people away."
And we've actually heard a lot of really interesting answers to this check-in question, such as, I've learned that it's okay to rely on other people.
Or I've learned that I should think about the consequences of my actions before I do something.
Comes up a lot, actually. I've learned to be more confident and take risks.
Or I've learned to be more loyal to my friends.
I've learned to only take responsibility for the things that are my responsibility. Of course, not all of our games are this level of deep projection and reflection. We played a game of No Thank You Evil with a team of 9-year-olds. And they were actually part of an organization called the Feed'em Force, which was fighting against...
They were fighting against the evil king Vishiswa.
Right.
And his team of food-themed supervillains.
So they fought like the Salad Mander, who had a pitchfork it was like a salad fork pitchfork, a magical one, obviously. They fought against the Sand Witch that rode atop a toothpick.
And they sailed through the 1,000 islands to fight the evil Caesar Newman.
And of course, even in this kind of game, we can still understand and refer a lot of the unconscious process, the thoughts and feelings and desires that the players project onto their characters. Some of those players are not ready for that level of really deep reflection, but we can still use the game to encourage reflection and to build skills.
And for some kids, just sitting at a table with peers is a huge leap forward. And we've got an opportunity this summer. We've been utilizing some of the other side of tabletop games, not just role-playing games, but other kinds of board games and card games. And we've seen some of the amazing benefits that other kinds of games can have as well. We played a game, if you're familiar with it, called Hanabi. I'm seeing some nodding heads. Hanabi is a fantastic game where you're holding your cards facing away from you. And the only way to know what cards to play is actually through the very limited hints you get from your fellow players in this cooperative game. And so on its surface, this is a very simple game about effective communication. But if you really think about it, if you really reflect on it, this is a game about trust. And it's a game about thinking about how much you trust other people, how much you require communication to build trust, and how much you can offer trust to other people by communicating with them effectively.
We also played a game that I'm sure lots of people are familiar with called Codenames. Yeah, a lot of nodding heads.
You got nodding heads and fist bumps on that one.
It's a spectacular game. So the idea behind the game is that there's two spy masters who are working to get their team to guess correctly from an array of words using a single word hint. And what's amazing about Codenames is that it's basically the entire game is focused on theory of mind skills. It's all about the idea of what do I know and understand and what meaning do I take from a word versus what meaning and understanding are the people that I'm trying to guess, the people on my team, going to take from a word. And so it requires a lot of that reflection skill, thinking about what I know versus what somebody else knows. I actually watched Adam give maybe just one of the worst hints of all time to a group recently. He gave the hint lassie to connect the words field and well, which is a great hint. I would have gotten that hint. But he was playing with a group of 13-year-olds who've never heard of lassie. Now, granted, what Adam was doing in that instance was actually modeling what it looks like for the spy master to act on his own knowledge without thinking about the knowledge and experience of his team. So it was good modeling. I also watched a spy master give out the clue, one of the best clues I've ever seen, combat with a K, to their group to connect Spike, Scorpion, and Pit. Right? Because they knew that somebody on their team was a fan of Mortal Kombat and would be able to pull those things together. Spectacular theory of mind skills. And really, we're just scratching the surface of the amazing potential of things like board games and card games.
I've actually, I mentioned earlier that I've been helping out at the Atlantic Street Center with their core gaming program, and we've seen in that group the amazing benefits of video games as well. So it's very different than the work we've been doing with Wheelhouse Workshop. It's very specific behavioral skills-based teaching. So we'll do things like teach a group of young people self-soothing strategies of taking deep breaths and using positive self-talk. And then they'll use those skills in the context of playing a really frustrating video game. So we'll have them play Super Meat Boy. If you're familiar with this game, it's very, very, very frustrating. And so they'll be practicing the skills of positive self-talk and deep breathing and building the skill in context. So it is important. You feel how good it feels, how much better you play that game if you're doing these skills. And then we translate those skills back into school life, family life, and community life. And we're seeing some amazing benefits of video games.
And I guess these benefits, all that we get to see in RPGs, in tabletop RPGs, we're recognizing that they extend beyond just that. They extend into board games and card games. They extend into video games. And not just that, I imagine they extend into games of all kinds. And we think that I think it's time to harness that potential. I think it's time to really start looking into that and digging into that and figuring out how we can do something with that.
So we've been running Wheelhouse Workshop and running groups like this for the last 6 years, and it's been just an amazing labor of love. When we started Wheelhouse Workshop, we started it with just a dream and literally the money in our pockets. We bought D8s because we couldn't afford D4s. So we had the players just do the math, which is great for teaching math. And we never imagined just how far it would take us. We've traveled around the country to talk about the various groups that we run, and it's been just amazing to see how far this idea can go. And now we want to take it even farther.
So we're very excited to announce to you guys, this is the official announcement, that we are expanding. We are creating a nonprofit which will be called Game to Grow, with a group of other really passionate community members in the geek and gaming community. And we are going to use that as a way to help expand and get not just the work that we're doing, but but the message of how good games can be for you out to the world. But Game to Grow is a bigger endeavor than we've ever taken on before, and we need your help with that. So along with our announcement for Game to Grow, we're also launching a crowdfunder, which will be through Indiegogo, and we actually have a video to show you guys about that.
Growing up can be really hard. You're awkward, you're nervous. You're not sure if anyone will ever understand you. Now it's harder than ever. Bullying has skyrocketed, and the amount of technological immersion among youth is making it more challenging than ever to build supportive friendships and to build the social skills necessary for the 21st century.
That's why we're launching Game to Grow. Game to Grow's mission is to help teens, adolescents, and emerging adults learn to be social and have fun with peers in a safe, supportive environment using games.
I'm Adam Davis.
And I'm Adam Johns.
6 years ago, we started helping kids become more confident, creative, and socially capable using tabletop games. We used our training in drama therapy,
Couple and family therapy,
education,
and psychology
to facilitate our gaming groups to intentionally target real-world areas of social growth.
We work with kids and teens with a variety of challenges. Everything from social anxiety to high-functioning autism to just trouble making friends at school. We've spoken around the country about the groups that we run, and journalists around the world have written about our work.
The best proof comes from the parents, who have seen firsthand how playing games in our groups has helped their children grow.
So before my son started coming to these groups, I would say we would run into problems at home with sibling issues.
Before these groups, she's very introverted. Afterwards, she's come out of her shell, she shines.
These groups have helped my son build social confidence that I didn't see in him before. You know, when he walks out of the group once a week, he's happy, he's always happy.
I love that my daughter's in a gaming group. It's what I grew up doing. It's how I learned to become a better person and more extroverted. And I just think it's great that she's playing those same games that I played growing up.
Actually, it's kind of like eating your vegetables without knowing you're doing it. And is more about feeling success in building friendships and having fun, and then also learning it in such a way that you can go apply that in other contexts.
The games have helped me grow in understanding of others and their situations rather than mine.
The groups have helped me understand my emotions. Since I started the gaming group, it's helped me be more comfortable, like asking other people to do things together.
These games have helped me make friends that and those friendships don't just apply to when I'm playing games.
It helps you find the alternative answer in everything.
These groups have helped me grow by making it easier for me to express myself to my friends and being able to like cope with feelings so I don't take it out on other people sometimes.
And now we want to expand that work. We want to use more games to serve a larger range of populations with a broader scope of challenges. We opened an office in Kirkland that can hold more kids than ever, and now we want to go to people who can't come to us. We want to take the power of intentional gaming into hospitals, treatment centers, and correctional facilities.
We'll host trainings at our new office so that other therapists, educators, and community organizers can come to us and bring the power of intentional gaming back to their communities. We also want to be able to travel to other locations to help build new practices around the country and around the world. We're on the cutting edge of something gigantic, and your help is essential.
I think more people should be able to play in groups like this so that they have an opportunity to be in a group where they know they have common interests with everyone else in the group.
I think more people should have groups like this because it helps them learn and grow as a person, allowing them to experience things, real life situations, and learn how to deal with them.
But we don't just want to help people game more. We want to help people game better.
We don't want people to just game. We want people to game to grow.
Don't just game, 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 game to grow.
Don't just game to grow.
Don't just game to grow.
Don't just game to grow. My dad is so dramatic.
I could not be more pleased to support Game to Grow.
I forgot what we were going to say next. Don't just game to grow. Oh, actually, yeah, that was what we were going to say next.
I was gonna see if I can get you guys to do that on film.
What do you guys think? Do you think you could give us a don't just game to grow on film?
All right, so I'm gonna say 3, I'm gonna say 2, I'm gonna say 1. I'm not gonna say anything else, and you're gonna say don't just game to grow. Thumbs up if you understand what I just said. Awesome. 3, 2, 1.
Don't just game to grow.
That was awesome.
Amazing. So the nonprofit is more than what we have been able to do with Wheelhouse Workshop. Obviously, we said in the video all the amazing stuff that we want to do, but we already have some stuff lined up that we want to be able to jump in and start doing right away. We're actually talking with a guy named Johnny Spangler, who's you might know as Johnny Knowing, who runs a Minecraft channel. We actually gave a talk with him way back in 2015. That was only 2 years ago, Adam.
Way back.
And we're talking with him about getting a group started as a Minecraft group where he would be working on using Minecraft to help build teamwork skills as well as to help build coding, using Minecraft modding to help build coding. And we really want to be able to expand into all of these other directions, and not just for what kinds of games we're using, but what kinds of populations we're serving, being able to get these kinds of groups, gaming groups that help people to people who really need it, as well as getting people trained, getting people who are interested in learning how can I better use games to help kids, to help teens, to help adults, and developing materials to help those people get trained and help those people learn new skills to be able to spread that word around.
So we're about to start our Q&A, but I'll go ahead and show you. That's the bit.ly to our crowdfunder. So if you have it in yourselves to donate, we would absolutely love it. If you're not interested in or willing to donate yet, please just share it on your social media accounts and get the word out, because we were really hoping to get started on day one with Johnny's help, getting some of those gaming groups started that we can't do on our own.